Tēnā koe te whare, tēnā koutou te whānau te whare paramata, kia ora mō tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Members, when the House broke for the dinner hour, we were debating the Energy, Innovation, Electric Vehicles and Other Matters Amendment Bill. Gareth Hughes.
Kia ora, Mr Speaker, nā mihi nui kia koutou kia ora. I rise to support this bill, but I wish there was some independent office of Parliament we could go to actually double-check the names of legislation before they're passed tonight. Because the last thing we should be calling this bill is the Energy Innovation Bill, because there's not really much innovation in it. There's no innovative thinking. Look, we support it because all this bill does is move around some eco-levies. It allows electric vehicles and bus lanes, which experts have actually told us could in fact be counterproductive where it happens. And then that's pretty much it. It deals with secondary networks, for example, for apartment buildings. But when you look around the world at all the real innovation which is happening in energy, you wouldn't call this bill an energy innovation bill if you knew what was happening around the world or the potential for New Zealand. Now, recently we heard there's $3.6 billion in missed energy efficiency and conservation opportunities facing the country. So if we wanted to talk about the real innovative energy sector, there's a lot of stuff we'd be talking about which isn't contained in this legislation. I wish it could have a more accurate title. I guess you can see it in the Minister Judith Collins' energy strategy, which has just come out today, which is meant to chart our energy efficiency work for the next decade. You know, it's a big deal. So what did we see? We saw only three things in this big multi-year strategy. The first is a 1% process heat intensity reduction. 1%. Sounds pretty good, right? But when you look at the data, that's what we've achieved since 1990. Mr Speaker, that's like me saying to you, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to go on a diet, but I'm going to do exactly the same thing I've done for the last couple of decades. That's not an ambitious target. That's like a pole vaulter setting the pole down at about a foot saying, I'm going to get to the Olympics if I can do this. And then we saw this energy intensity target, which wasn't the previous strategy, dropped entirely. Now, I think I know why. I think it was dropped entirely because under the current government we've dismally missed the target. In fact, we're 7th worst in the entire developed world for energy intensity as a percentage of the economy. That's a big deal because what that means is all of us as individuals, all of us as families, all of our businesses are paying more for 1 unit of economic output than the vast majority of other OECD equivalent countries. So again, we have an uninnovative energy innovation bill and uninnovative, unambitious business as usual energy strategy released today. But I think anyone watching the parliamentary broadcast tonight, they see a lot of politicians criticising other parties' policies or inactions. What they want to see, though, is other parties' solutions. And that's what I'd like to lay out with the bulk of my time. So if we wanted to have a conversation about what an innovative energy bill would look like, I suspect it might look a little bit like the energy policy the Green Party released recently. Because we didn't just sit in a room and think about it and talked about ourselves about it. We went out and actively consulted business. We worked with Business NZ. We were talking to electricity retailers, big and small, the lines companies, the generators, the new incumbents, the entrepreneurs. We actually talked to people who are out there innovating like Flick and other different models like Vector, using batteries, solar panels, peer-to-peer electricity networks, absolutely fundamentally disrupting the way we've done electricity for the last 100 years. And what we found is there was a better, smarter, cheaper way we could run an energy system in New Zealand. Let's start with energy poverty, which this bill doesn't address entirely. We know there are 1/5, 20% of New Zealand families who are classed as being in energy poverty. They're spending more than 10% of their weekly disposable income just to keep the lights on or keep the heating on. At the same time, we've got 40,000 trips being made to the hospital by New Zealand children because they're sick as a result of their housing. 40,000 trips to hospital by Kiwi kids because they're sick from our housing. In fact, 1,600 additional deaths are attributed to our cold, damp housing in winter. That's more than the road toll. Our houses are killing more New Zealanders than the road toll. So if we're talking about energy poverty, what I'd like to propose is a winter energy payment. What we've proposed is recycling the dividends the power companies give to the government and recycling that to households earning less than $50,000 a year. We could be helping 530,000 households next winter, smoothing out their power price spikes over winter through a winter energy supplement, which is what they do in Canada, which is what they do in the UK, which is what they do in some Australian states. So there's cheaper electricity. What about cleaner? Because this innovative legislation does nothing directly to get us towards the 90% renewables target. What the Green Party would like to do is actually have a little bit more ambition to acknowledge the threat of climate change and say we can get to 100% renewables in average hydrological conditions by 2035. By 2030. What we've also done is published a model from Rocky Mountain Institute researchers showing how 100% could look. It's affordable, it's achievable, and I'd put it to the House eminently desirable to set that target a little bit higher. But what about embracing new technology? Now, what the Green Party would like to do is at the lines network area, which is around 40% of a customer's bill, these regional distribution monopolies, that's a huge area where we could see real innovation, which is missing in this legislation. We've got 29 separate lines companies across the country, in many cases reinventing the wheel, duplicating costs. Many of them only have a tiny customer base, so they don't have the scale, the expertise, or the capital to embrace new technologies. What I've proposed is we can make it easier, using some analogies in the Local Government Act, to have lines companies work together, merge where appropriate, and their communities support it. I'm not talking about forcefully amalgamating our lines companies, giving them better, easier options to work together to save all their customers and the whole country money. The other thing is that our lines companies are very good at installing poles and wires. That's kind of how we've done electricity for 100 years. We've got pretty good at it now. What we need to do is get better at finding the cheaper alternatives to traditional poles and wires. And they're out there when you look across the world, from lithium-ion batteries to energy efficiency and conservation methods, through to demand-side measures. That Rocky Mountain research I mentioned that we published showed that a negawatt, using a unit of electricity less than a megawatt, a unit of electricity more, is 10 times cheaper than the cheapest new generation we have in New Zealand, which is our dirt cheap wind resource. We could be doing it 10 times cheaper if we encourage people to find easier ways to use less. Now, that could be insulation, that could be smart appliances, that could be sending price signals so people choose when they use electricity to save money and save the rest of the grid in carbon. I'd also put it that our lines companies could be publishing more information around where their network constraints are, so that new entrepreneurs, new businesses, the true innovators we're not really seeing in this legislation tonight, could say, well, we could invest in a big distribution line which is going to cost X millions of dollars here, but we've got a cheaper option, can we put it to you? So we've proposed a comprehensive series of measures to support our distribution network to save money, save carbon, and run a more smarter grid. In terms of our electricity market, we've proposed opening it up, more transparency and sunlight, because we heard a very clear message from our smaller retailers. They don't feel we have a competitive market. And in fact, that's what the International Energy Agency said earlier this year in a comprehensive report into the state of the New Zealand electricity system. We'd like to propose more transparency on what's actually happening on the hedge markets, so that all retailers can operate on a level playing field. I want to see smart new companies come in with offering their consumers better solutions to manage electricity and save them money. So what we've talked about is a smarter way to run the electricity system, more transparency, fundamental reforms to our distribution networks. But if we're going to talk about energy innovation, in fact, what we're seeing by inaction is one of the least innovative things and the most detrimental things happening in our entire electricity system. That's the solar tax, which Judith Collins has sat by, while Unison, a local regional lines monopoly, is charging their customers an additional charge just for having a solar panel. It's entirely arbitrary, entirely ridiculous. There are better ways we could deal with the pricing impacts of greater solar penetration in New Zealand, but taxing it, it's a bit of an unfair word, a specific solar charge is incredibly unfair. It's simply trying to hold back the solar growth that we've seen in New Zealand. Now, I want to see our power companies compete based on the offers, the products they're offering their consumers, the services, the price, not just competing because they've got a monopoly position and they want to stop customers from making a specific technology choice. If we allow this to happen, they could happen to customers who insulate, who invest in efficient appliances. So, what this bill is not an energy innovation bill. What we do have, though, is a suite of comprehensive consulted policies which are innovative, which is a fantastic choice for the public of New Zealand, because it's important that we get cleaner, cheaper, smarter electricity. It's just around the corner. We're seeing fundamental disruption in the electricity system, but token bills like this that are really false advertising won't cut it.
Tracy Martin.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.